All right, good afternoon, Marlins fans. Welcome to another episode of the Miami Marlins Prospects Pod. My name is David Fernandez. I am here with you, as always, with Joe Frisaro from manon2nd.com. We're coming to you today from the 5 Reasons Sports Network YouTube channel, and we are going to get into some of the top hitters that are sort of still with the Marlins farm system. I mean, we've seen a lot of the hitters sort of graduate up to the major league level. So we're going to touch on some of the guys that are impressing us at the upper levels of the minors today. And, really like who might be among the September call-ups since, September 1st is tomorrow. And we're going to get into all of that here today. Joe, how you doing?
Doing great, David. Always fun to do these and getting towards the end of the minor league season. And, I think we're going to kind of dive in with a friend of the show and Nasim Nunez, who we had on a week ago. And tell everybody what we did. We gave a little podcast good karma to him because Nasim has had a really good week and doing very well at Double A.
Yeah, so he sat down with us last week, and if you haven't seen it, it's here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Just scroll back to last Wednesday, and we had to sit down, a nice long conversation with Nasim, and since then he has been on an absolute tear. In the 6 games since our interview last week, Nasim has gone 10 for 22. He's hitting .455. He's got a .500 on base percentage, 2 doubles, 5 RBI, 5 runs scored, and 7 stolen bases in just 6 games. Just incredibly impressive what this young man is doing. He's really sort of coming into his own at this point with the Blue Wahoos for the month, essentially. He's only been there since, I think, the beginning of August. He's played 23 games for them at this point with a .268 batting average, a .384 on base percentage, which is great. 5 doubles, 12 RBIs, 18 runs scored, 15 walks, and 14 stolen bases. That gets him to he's well over 60 stolen bases at this point. I think he had 49 when he was promoted from high A Beloit to double A Pensacola. So he's at 50. No,
he's at 63 steals now.
Yeah, 63 steals, which, his target, if you go back and watch the interview, his target, he wanted to break the single season record for Beloit. Obviously, he won't get to do that, but he is on track to do that. That would have been 66. So he's doing great. What do you have on Nunez, Joe?
Yeah, it's the speed thing. And, I was putting together some notes on him. Juan Pierre for the Marlins in 2003 stole 65 bags, and that's the Marlins season record. And Nasim's now at 63, so he's going to pass that. Obviously the big league stealing is a lot different than the minor leagues, but still, that struck me just how many he has in a short period of time since joining the Blue Wahoos in Pensacola. And what also is getting me, David, is the batting average up to .268, the on base .384, slugging .329. We know he's not going to hit for any kind of power, but that .713 OPS. But again, he's got what? He's got 14 steals. Since in 23 games. 23 games. I mean, that's ridiculous. He's getting on base and he's gone. And why I want to kind of mention that is, when the Marlins are looking to build a functional offense in a pitcher's ballpark like Lone Depot, you got to kind of manufacture runs a certain way. And I think I touched on the Man on Second podcast about they have 100 stolen bases or whatever. They lead the majors in steals, but it's not like that's very impactful. They're kind of like they're still getting 2 runs a game, no matter what they're doing. But, Nasim Nunez could kind of fit what they can do in terms of first to third, first to home on an extra base hit, getting, the threat in the extra innings with the guy on second. There's a lot that a player like he brings in. And, I bring this to mind because Corbin Carroll, we talked about him in the last podcast or two, with Arizona, just got called up with plenty of fanfare, top 5 overall prospect in baseball. That kid hits a ground ball to second base. Any bobble he's on.
Yeah.
And last night against Phillies, he scores on a double from first without a play. The kid, I know the fans of the StatCast and the sprint speed. I mean, he's touching 31 feet per second and basically coasting home because it's fun to watch. And I'm just wondering if because Nasim, remember he just turned 22 in late August, about a week or so ago. These young guys, there's a lot of young, speedy guys in the game. I wonder if it's going to kind of bring a little bit more of that dynamic to the game. Certainly from the Marlins standpoint, Nasim brings that element. He's not the dynamic hitter, and we know the defense is a whole different level because he's there. He's Gold Glove, kind of being groomed Gold Glove caliber. But what kind of impact can he make on the game with his legs?
I mean, I think you touched on the two things that he's already got major league level skills in the bag, like his defensive capabilities, which we highlighted when we spoke to him last week. And then obviously that speed. And during the interview last week, he was talking about how he's looking to get on, and then he knows that he's in the back of the pitcher's mind already. And that makes me think back to that 03 team, right? When,
Luis Castillo.
We saw Luis Castillo get on, and he was, in the back of their minds, right? And we saw that kind of effect that Juan Pierre had. And even moving forward a few years, looking at guys like D. Strange Gordon, he had that effect on pitchers as well. The Marlins, I mean, John Birdie has done that to a certain extent, but at a much, smaller level, obviously. But if you can get a guy like Nunez, I mean, even if he hits 250, but if he's getting on base at a 350 clip, a 380 clip, he's absolutely going to have that sort of impact at the major league level because he can manufacture runs, because he can be a guy that goes from, first base and scores on a double in the gap. I wrote an article about our interview with him, and it's up on 5reasonsports.com. And in there, I quote one of his teammates, Pensacola Blue House outfielder Davis Bradshaw. He called Nunez the most fun player to watch on the team. And Bradshaw said, when he gets a walk, it automatically turns into a triple because he's going to steal second and third. I love Nunez to death, and he'll be fun to watch. I mean, that's kind of the spark that I feel is missing from this Marlins lineup. You were talking about how they're barely scoring two runs per game. I mean, if they don't get a few hits tonight, right, they're going to end up with a sub 200. They're going to be below the Mendoza line for the entire month of August. They're at a 199 batting average right now, which is bonkers. They've got a 590 OPS for the month. Both of those are 30th in the majors. They've only scored 60 runs this month, so they're averaging 2.2 runs per game. I mean, it's just the offensive output is nowhere near what they want it to be and what we're hoping that it would be. And adding a guy like Nunez down the line, obviously he's not going to be a September call-up, but adding a guy like that with that kind of skill set is definitely something that could probably jumpstart this offense going forward.
Yeah, no doubt. And, he's a guy now with the DH too, with the pitcher not hitting. Even if he hits 9, he gives you that kind of bottom of the order, top of the order. If you could get somebody maybe with a little more of a proven on base average, or whether it's Birdie or not, you could go hit Nunez 9th, Birdie 1st. You have two guys there that could wreak havoc, batting in front of each other if they could get on base. I really, because I'm going to be in October going to spend a week in Arizona and do some fall league. I really hope the Marlins, I'm lobbying him, Miami, send Nunez to the fall league. I want to see him, and we'll get all sorts of good interviews from him there. But in the meantime, let's talk about someone else in Pensacola, because this is a position, two guys. Let's talk about the catching position.
Yeah. Because
normally when the rosters could expand to 40 at the max, it would be automatic. A team would bring up a third catcher. And we know Nick Fortes is kind of putting his stamp on being the regular catcher for the Marlins. Certainly if he's not 1A, he'll be 1B with Jacob Stallings basically in 23. But there's a catcher I've been following who's always really stood out defensively in the system in Will Banfield. Offensively, Will's starting to show a little bit of life. And I haven't quit on this kid. I think Will Banfield could have a very, long career in the big leagues as a backup because defensively he's as good as it gets. But, he has to show a little bit more at the plate. But you're showing on the graphic that Will is certainly capable of hitting a little bit. And he doesn't have to do much. Keep in mind, he was a high school kid out of Georgia, didn't go to Vanderbilt. And he got hurt by the pandemic, as that class that lost a good year or so of development. That if Banfield could kind of still make a statement, he's a prospect. I'm not throwing in the towel and saying for sure that he is not going to make it.
Yeah, he's definitely interesting. I mean, I put up his stats here. There's a typo with his name. Obviously, it's not Canfield, it's Banfield. So my bad on that one. Sorry, Will. But he received his promotion to AA from High A Beloit. I think it was in mid-July, and he's heating up over his last 15 games. Here this month he's hitting 281. He's got a little bit of extra base power there, with a homer and 3 doubles over 15 games. That K percentage is a nice low number, and when he puts the bat on the ball, he's getting on base pretty regularly. For the season, his batting average is only 213 with a 249 on base. But again, as he said, he's a guy that, the offense isn't necessarily his calling card. It's more of the defense for him. So he does kind of profile as that classic backup catcher, right? But he does have some of that in there, and it'll be interesting to see if he can carry this momentum that he's built here in August, if he can carry it through to the end of the year, because he hasn't really had great offensive production over the last couple seasons. I mean, his best numbers came way back in 2018 in rookie ball. He hit 256 in rookie ball. He played in the Arizona Fall League last year, I think it was. He hit 231 there. So, not terrible for a catcher, right? But if he can do that, it continue to develop his offensive production, then the Marlins, they might have something at this catcher position, because his sort of catching counterpart in Pensacola is a guy that we've talked about off and on throughout the season. It's Paul McIntosh, and he's a guy that sort of came out of nowhere for the Marlins, and he's really, really produced at times this season. Been kind of inconsistent, but he definitely has broken out here. 24 years old. For the year, he's hitting 253 with an 836 OPS, 12 homers, 22 doubles, 46 RBI, 19.5% K rate, and then a 13.9 walk rate, which are pretty good. He missed a lot of time in August due to an injury, but he's back in the lineup now. And over the last 8 games since his return, he's hitting 259 with a 910 OPS, couple doubles, couple homers, 6 RBI, 9 runs scored. He's a guy that really sort of produces with the bat. And again, we've talked about him off and on. And at 24 years old, I wouldn't be surprised if the Marlins do end up calling up another catcher, maybe McIntosh moves up to Jacksonville either to finish this year, but I would imagine he's there by next year. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, it's kind of funny. You could combine the two and make one super player, because Banfield's defense is that good. It is. He's so easy to pitch to, and nothing gets by him. It controls the running game, but McIntosh impacts the baseball. Yeah. If you're looking for this offense, this guy, he may not even be a catcher. He might profile out more as a first base, left fielder type, more of a hit first player if they even wanted to go that route. But he is an interesting player, McIntosh, because I think he could be, kind of what if they were going to do that 2.5 catchers Alfaro thing. Yeah. That if McIntosh, he would be the guy I would experiment with that he could be behind the plate. He could be in left field, first base, DH, because he's a high exit velo guy, from my understanding. He just impacts the ball. Now, if you take I'm just curious because you post those numbers again, David.
Yeah.
For Mac, it's like you take him from having a squat every day and all the grind and take foul balls off wear your knees out behind the plate, and what's that going to look like if he's just a hitter?
Yeah. No, it's a
little. He reminds me a little bit, and maybe not the physical tools exactly, but Francisco Mejia of the Rays. Because there was a knock on Mejia that he was going to be a hit-first guy and not a great defensive catcher. And that's how he went from Cleveland to San Diego, and then he goes to Tampa, and now he's great at everything because if you go to Tampa Bay, they figured out how to tap into you. But, a guy who was a hit-first guy is – McIntosh is interesting. For sure he'll be in AAA next year. But, again, he's an impact the baseball type of player for me, and Banfield's more of that classic old school catcher. Again, if he could just hit 220, 210, he's going to be in the big leagues a long time, and then he'll be a coach manager because he's one of those guys who just is just that classic Jeff Mathis type of guy who could have a really long career, and every team that he's on loves him as a teammate, and he has a 10-year career.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how he kind of finishes the season. He's been a little inconsistent with his production. He got off to such a great start in April. I mean, he was hitting, what do I have here? I wrote it down. He was hitting 316 with a 979 OPS in April, but then he took a step back in May, and then he had a solid June, and then he stepped, took a step back in July. In July was his worst month. He hit 191 in July. So it's good to see that those numbers are ticking back up here with his production in August. Hopefully he can kind of carry that through and finish the year on a high note. But again, at 24 years old, he's starting to knock on the door. The Marlins are going to have to make a decision in the not too distant future. Before we move on to the AAA guys that we wanted to get to, I do want to mention one of the pitchers that we've talked about off and on, although probably not as much as maybe he deserves at this point. But Dax Fulton was named the minor leaguer of the month for the Marlins organization. He's with Pensacola now, started the year in high A Beloit. Posted a 2.14 ERA in the month of August. He posted 2 wins and struck out 17. He's a guy that could be interesting down the line. Not this year. He won't be among the September call-ups this year, but he's certainly a guy that we have to keep a close eye on moving forward. What do you think about Dax Fulton, Joe?
Yeah, all the fanfare that Max Meyer got this year. We're about a year and a half from Dax falling into that. And I believe they were the same draft class. I think he was second rounder that year in 20, I believe. But lefty, obviously, he had the Tommy John in high school. But he looks the part of the big lefty. You had the graphic 6'4", 6'5", a hard thrower, good breaking stuff. And, I'm sure, Yuri Perez is still pretty darn young. But, those are guys that also, we talk about a Marlins rotation that could have Sandy and Yuri. Then you also think if Sandy is moved in 2 years or whatever, a Yuri Dax could be a 1-2 righty-lefty punch at the top of your rotation, depending on, how the organization's moving forward and, are they ready to really contend. But, he's on the cusp. We'll probably dive in a lot more with Dax down the line going into 23. But, again, there was always a lot to like about Dax Fulton. It was only a matter of recovering from injury, the Tommy John, and then just logging the innings. I know he dealt with a little sporadic control early on. Expected when you miss so much time, pitching is so much feel. But again, I think, Jake Eater will be coming back, next year, the Tommy John, and Dax is going to kind of come in. Trevor, like he's going to be coming joining the Marlins again. Dax is that next level of left-handed starter, and there's a lot to like about the kid. And we've also touched on this too. If they're going to improve the offense via trade, Dax Fulton, I wonder did they send him to the fall league? Because if you go to the fall league, you might be getting close to, those guys usually get moved. We saw Cam Meisner last year got moved. Those are often candidates to be moved because everyone saw everyone. We talked earlier in the year about Ezekiel Duran, for instance, of the Texas Rangers, who's now starting at third, and he has 4 or 5 homers, doing very well. I saw him in the fall league last year, and so he was high on my radar. And there's many other players like that, different level. I hope that we get to the fall league soon enough while we know the rosters. But Dax Fulton is one of those guys who could either be part of the future or part of bringing in a player, offensive help for the future.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, as you said, if he ends up on that Arizona Fall League roster. That's a showcase where scouts are there. Obviously, so many team representatives are there. Maybe the Marlins deal from their pitching depth in order to help the lineup. And we all know that this lineup needs help. Now, the Marlins did make a deal trading from that pitching depth to add to the lineup, not to the major league lineup, add to the Jacksonville AAA lineup. And there were some questions about his production, immediately following the trade. In the aftermath, some people were questioning, why would the Marlins trade for a guy like this? But Jordan Groshans is starting to prove people wrong with his production these days in Jacksonville. Over the 21 games that he's played with the Jumbo Shrimp since the trade deadline, he is hitting .342 with a .421 on base percentage and a .487 OPS. He's got a couple homers. He's got 5 doubles and 8 RBI. We were all sold on his ability as somebody who really sort of understands the strike zone. And we could see that in these numbers. 11 walks so far and only 12 strikeouts. So he's only striking out 13.6% of the time. He is a versatile defensive infielder. He has made 8 starts at shortstop, 8 starts at third base, and 5 starts, or at least 5 appearances rather, at second base. So he's kind of all over the diamond at this point. He is currently riding a 9-game hitting streak and a 15-game on-base streak. So he's producing really, really well here in Jacksonville. Prior to the trade, people were questioning his production because in the 72 games that he played, mostly with Buffalo, the AAA team for the Toronto Blue Jays organization, he was hitting .247 with a .341 on base and a .293 slugging with 9 doubles, a homer, 24 RBI, and 51 strikeouts. So that works out to 17% of the time. Joe, some people were questioning the Jordan Groshans move at the trade deadline, but he's looking pretty good in Jacksonville, 22 years old. Is there any shot that we see Jordan Groshans for a minute here in September with the Marlins?
Well, yeah, obviously the answer is we'll know on Thursday. I would tend to think that would be a reach, only because if you're going to add one more pitcher and one more position player, who's that going to be? And again, with Jordan, it wasn't. Yes, I'd love to see him. I would think that would be great, but what are they going to do with their roster? Because, at the big league level, prospect, Charles LeBlanc is trying to get on the field more. Yeah. Birdie and Wendell, they're there. And then what if Jazz comes back at the end of September? It's like, are you looking to bring him in now, or do you is Jacksonville going to the playoffs?
They are fighting for it right now. They're 2.5 games back in for the division lead. They were kind of neck and neck right there with Durham, but they had some struggles recently. But they're 2.5 games out of a playoff spot at the moment, so they're still in the mix.
So I would if it was me, I'd probably keep him down, try to make the playoffs, and get him regular playing time and the experience of that. And then because you still could call him up September 10th or so if someone gets hurt or something like that. The rosters don't just lock in. So right. you could do that. But he's another guy like with Nasim. I want him at the fall league so I could really kind of take a look at him and then bring him into spring training and have him on the cusp of what kind of role he has as, and, what's the infield going to look like going into 23. But, obviously the kid's doing his part, I don't know whether the sample size, the slugging is still going to have to be there for me, especially if he's going to be at third base more than shortstop. Whether he's a utility guy or is he a regular. But you could tell right now the Marlins clearly with Brian Anderson in right field, they don't really want him at third. So Wendell's getting a lot of work there. LeBlanc's getting work there. Could Groshans get work there? Potentially. If somebody gets a little dinged up or something like that, it could be. But I think I'd try to let that Jacksonville team kind of run it out, see if they could go to the playoffs and then just get that experience. And then when they're knocked out, if there's an opportunity, unless you wanted to shut him down then and get him in Arizona. Because to me, if he plays in September with the Marlins, chances are he's not going to Arizona.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And they are treating him like a utility player at this point because he's basically split time between shortstop and third base. And then he's also getting reps over at second base. The Marlins they obviously put a high value on that sort of defensive versatility. We've seen them sort of, favor guys that can do that in the past. So it'll be interesting to see if that's the plan for him moving forward, instead of maybe locking him into a single position. Now, one of his teammates is, locked into a position of sorts. He's a first baseman called up, from Pensacola earlier this summer. I'm talking about Troy Johnston. He's a guy that, he looked really good with Pensacola earlier this season, and now he's getting going with Jacksonville as August wraps up. He's played 7 games for the Jumbo Shrimp so far at first base exclusively. He could also be a DH, and in a pinch, you could throw him in a corner outfield spot, left field. But playing first base for now, especially since Lewin Diaz is up with the big club. He's hitting .280 at this point with a 1.077 OPS. He's got 3 homers, 2 doubles, and 4 RBI in those 7 games. 3 walks, 6 strikeouts. So the strikeouts, not a terrible number at 21.4%. A little bit of bad luck for Johnston so far, only a .250 batting average on balls in play. That's typically a higher number when you can put the ball in the field. His numbers with Pensacola with the Blue Wahoos in 2022, 85 games. He hit .292 with an 810 OPS, 10 homers, 20 doubles, 49 RBI, 71 strikeouts, so an 18.8% K rate at AA. This is a guy at 25 years old, could be a useful player, left-handed hitter, could be a useful player for the Marlins down the line, especially since obviously we saw, Jesus Aguilar was designated for assignment. He actually just landed with the Baltimore Orioles, so hopefully he can get some meaningful games in to wrap up this season. But Cooper is an injury away from being an extended stay on the out of the lineup. So a guy like Troy Johnston is almost like that next guy in line. Lewin Diaz is with the big club now. Johnston is manning first base for AAA. We know Gerard could probably play a little bit at first base too, but really Johnston is kind of the next man up at first base. Joe, what do you think about Troy?
Yeah, he kind of falls in a little bit with the Groshans situation. It's like, where's the playing time? Again, if you want Lewin to get the looks, then Troy's not getting the looks. But keep this in mind too. Neither, Troy nor Groshans are on the 40-man.
Right.
So you can't just, you're going to have to make a call to, normally you're not calling guys up unless there's multiple injuries or you put someone on the 60-day IL, creating 40-man roster spot spaces. Right. They would almost see, and I'd probably do the same with Troy, just, try to get to the playoffs, try to, increase the opportunity. I know Troy was at the Fall League last year as well. So I think for some of these guys, I think their next step, if they don't hit if let's say they even get to the playoffs and it's a quick exit, if it's not Miami, till early October when the season ends, why don't you get some winter ball for some of these guys? I think that could be their next path as they continue to come into spring training and see if they could kind of put themselves up, and like LeBlanc kind of created that value. I think that those guys are kind of where LeBlanc was last year at this time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for Johnston. I'm with you. Probably not a September call-up unless something has gone so far sideways that, they have to make some sort of emergency move. But, those two guys, Groshans and Johnston, they're really sort of producing kind of in the middle of the order there for Jacksonville. Some of the other guys in the order these days are familiar names to Marlins fans. Avisao Garcia is in the lineup tonight for the Jumbo Shrimp. He's going through his rehab process. He has not looked good. He is 1 for 12 with 5 strikeouts. So, maybe he gets it going tonight, but it's just a matter of time before he's back with the Marlins. And then, 2 of the outfielders that were with the Marlins through the early part of the season, Jesus Sanchez and Bryan De La Cruz, neither of them are in the lineup tonight. So it makes you wonder, is one of those guys going to be back with the team come tomorrow or Friday maybe? It'll be interesting to see. Sanchez is hitting 194 in 18 games here in Jacksonville. Although over the last 2 weeks, to give him credit, over the last 2 weeks, he has gotten a little bit better, hitting 235 with a 709 OPS, 3 doubles and a homer. So had a lot of struggles early on, but he's starting to get it going. De La Cruz was kind of the flip of that. He was really hot when he got sent down, but he's cooled off of late. He's hitting 250 with a 743 OPS, a double and 2 homers over the last couple weeks. So it'll be interesting to see if either of those guys make another appearance. What would you do with Jesus Sanchez at this point, Joe?
Well, if Garcia is only days away, then you're not bringing him much unless what are you doing to add to your roster? You think they would add one position player. If that's either or De La Cruz or Sanchez. The only thing is I would think De La Cruz gives you another right-handed bat. You already got Blade, down there. And, it just seems right now and another thing that could affect like Groshans is, you got Luke Williams who plays infield as well. So, and Williams plays the outfield. So you kind of got a lot of positions covered. Do you bring Sanchez up for one last look, just to see? Because obviously JJ has had his inconsistencies. But then you're doing the same thing. You gave JJ a month and not, more than that. Right. But you could do some sort of rotation. But I think it's a matter does Garcia come up tonight and get 2 at-bats and they pull him and then they send him to Miami and he's activated tomorrow? I don't think they're looking at Avi's numbers per se. I think they're just, when does he feel he's feeling his body has seen enough pitching to call him up. But Avi is the guy that would be first and foremost. And then, you're stuck with Sanchez. But yeah, I think I've noted about his options are now burned. So he will go into 23 with no options left. So which really makes it tough for him to have to make a team and stick. And it decreases his trade value. But you give him one look to say, okay, we think a little more highly of him going into next spring because you could carry him all year if you choose to do that route. But there's some interesting roster decisions they've made that kind of are, because you really want to see Blade, you want to see Burdick, and you want to see Sanchez, you want to see De La Cruz, you want to see Garcia back, and who am I missing? There's someone on the big club. And Gerard. You got Gerard out there as well. So it's like, barring injuries, but the thing about it is Sanchez and De La Cruz are on the 40-man. Right. So they're easy. They could be optioned up or down the rest of the way as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out from a roster perspective. That's definitely true. And then moving into the offseason, I know they've called up a ton of guys, so they've added them to the 40-man, which kind of protects them from Rule 5, but there's still a handful of names that that are in the system right now that the Marlins need to consider protecting from the Rule 5 draft. Probably a guy like Josh Simpson, reliever, left-handed reliever, somebody that they're probably going to want to hang on to. But it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out moving forward. Joe, I think that's it for today, right? I mean, we've touched
Yeah.
on some of the bats, kind of the next guys in line for, potential promotions either from the AA level to AAA or possibly from AAA to the majors as the rosters get expanded here in September. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Make sure you're taking a look at dugoutmugs.com/man-on-2ND to get your hands on one of these fancy drinking vessels. If you use that link, you're obviously helping us out. And our show today was actually brought to you by Prize Picks, one of the sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Prize Picks is the easiest, fastest, and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Members play the over-under on between 2 and 5 players of their choice. You can pick from a wide variety of sports and stat types, and even mix and match different sports in one entry. The more picks you correctly predict, the more money you win. Payouts on Prize Picks can be as high as 10 to 15 times the stake amount. Head over to prizepicks.com and use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, to get a deposit match up to $100. Again, that's 5 at FIVE, prizepicks.com. You can play baseball props there. You can play Marlins props there. They have them up every single day. So check out prizepicks.com if you haven't already. Okay, Joe, tomorrow's a big day for you, right? It's birthday?
Yeah. I made it another year.
Yes,
so it's always a big moment. So I'm going to try to not do anything tomorrow. I have my traditional lasagna dinner, which is a birthday tradition I had since I was a kid. And so we're going to have lasagna and ice cream cake and watch baseball if it fits into the plans, but not write or talk about it on podcast or writing for anyone. So
that's awesome.
But again, thank you for the early birthday message mentioned. Appreciate that, and thanks for another great podcast. And obviously, subscribe for the channel. And the playoffs for the minor leagues are coming up soon too. We'll touch on that as well, and keep you posted the rest of the way. And carry us out of here, David.
Absolutely. Like you said, subscribe, throw on those notifications. Make sure you're checking in with the 5 Reasons Sports Network to get all of the great content that's coming, not just Marlins stuff, but Heat, Dolphins, Canes, all of it. Thanks for watching, everybody.